used to. So I think what we've seen from the cyber, well, sorry, introduce who I am first. I'm CEO of BH Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm here in Dublin. We specialize in cybersecurity and data protection. I've also acted as a former special advisor on internet security to Europol's Cybercrime Centre, otherwise known as EC3. I'm an expert advisor to the European Agency on Information Security, ENISA. And indeed, when this attack happened, one of the implications was I was on RTE, BBC, various other media outlets talking about this cyber attack, and indeed I'm regularly quoting other ones as well. And I think it's no surprise to those of you tuned into this that our lives have become much more dependent on computers and the internet and cyber in general. Your average car now has something like I think 33 computers in it if it's relatively new. We have computers in our pockets, our smartphones. We have computers on our wrists. The buildings that we live in are controlled by computers with heat and light and everything else. Most of us continue doing our work via computers. We travel to work, it's managed by computers. So we have this huge dependency on the IT world. And I think one of the lessons that we need to take away from the attack on the HSE is that dependency, while it brings many benefits to us as individuals, as businesses, as professionals, and indeed to society, there are risks involved in those dependencies if we don't manage them correctly. We've seen the major impact the attack had on the ability of many of you and your colleagues to deliver services to the public with computers were totally unavailable. And even to this day, months after the initial attack, there are still, I believe, 10 to 15% of the IT systems offline as a result of the cyber attack within the HSE. So there are key implications there. Now, one of the things that the attack on the HSE highlighted is not just that dependency, but also that cyber is no longer or can no longer be treated solely as an IT problem. My geek friends and myself, we need help from others to help resolve this problem. And HSE being taken offline and that implications brought in parties outside of traditional IT. Somebody working in the industry, this is not the first ransomware attack I'm familiar with. We've dealt with many ransomware attacks over the past number of years and many other type of cyber attacks. This one, though, really had far-reaching implications, not just outside the HSE and not just outside Ireland. And I've a few slides to go through to reinforce some of those things. But the key things to remember is that we had the Taoiseach out talking about the stance this country is going to take with regards to the ransom demands and the extortion demands that were being given. And so the HSE was a good example of the first time a critical part of a country's infrastructure was impacted by a cyber attack. And what does that mean? And that has highlighted that countries need to respond to this at a political and policy level, not just as an IT level. And at the same time that the HSE suffered the cyber attack, there was a major ransomware attack against a gas pipeline company on the east coast of America called Colonial Pipeline. Now, gas in America is also known as petrol here, so forgive the confusion. But this gas pipeline company had to take its pipeline pumping systems offline to deal with the attack, which resulted in shortages of petrol and diesel in forecourts within states and cities on the east coast of America, which in turn drew drove up prices of food and other things because of the scarcity of fuel. So yet another example of critical infrastructure belonging to a nation being taken offline by a cyber attack and having real world implications outside of IT on the individuals. That has that attack and the HSE attack has raised the whole area of cyber attacks and the responsibility countries have on dealing with these things to an international level. And you know, we've seen a similar attack after that in June. Kaseya are an IT management company. They provide software for IT departments to manage computers all over the in the IT department. So, you know, if it's installed on your computer, the IT department can remotely manage your computer and fix a problem. But it's also used by companies to manage their customers' computers. There was 15,000 businesses impacted by this attack. The criminals demanded a $70 million ransom to get this to get them back. One company that was impacted was the Co-op chain of supermarkets in Sweden. All their point of sale devices, their tills and swipe card systems for people to pay were all taken offline. They had to shut down all their stores nationwide in Sweden. So these attacks are having a bigger impact, as I said, outside of IT. So much so that we have seen that at the US and Russia have had serious debates at the UN Council with regards to the impact of cyber attacks. The gang that we believe that was behind the cyber attack against HSE is believed, you know, we can't say with 100% certainty, but we're pretty close to 100% certainty saying they're actually operating and based out of Russia, as are many other criminal gangs that operate at this level. And the Russian government kind of turns a blind eye to this activity, providing these criminals don't impact any Russian organizations or companies. So you often find that these criminals won't attack Russian organizations, but are quite happy to attack Western organizations, and the Russian government will turn a blind eye to it. And the World Economic Forum in this year's Global Risk Report, as you can see there, has shown cybersecurity failure as being the number 5 global risk. No surprise to see what the number 1 risk there is, which is infectious diseases. Just as an aside, in January of 2020, infectious diseases were in the top 10 risks, all right, but was down at number 10. So it just shows you how maybe the foresight this report can have in the risk it does highlight can actually come to fruition. And close to home here in Ireland, we do see cybersecurity is an issue that directors need to be taken importantly. 93% directors, according to the Institute Directors survey, say they take cybersecurity important, which is great. But if you take the third bullet point down there, 40% of them have no formal cybersecurity strategy in place. So how can you be taking security seriously if you don't have a strategy in place? All these companies would have a sales and marketing strategy, health and safety strategy, all strategies for everything else, but you need strategies in place for cybersecurity as well. And we are seeing an increase in the rise of attacks here in Ireland, not just on the HSE has been a prime example, but we are, as a nation, have become a prime target for cyber criminals. Number one, we have a whole lot of multinationals with their operations based here, with data centers, etc. So that's a big draw for criminals. But as a nation and our economy, we are moving away from the traditional agricultural economy that we were 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago to being a much more knowledge-based economy, and therefore much more reliant on IT and computers, and therefore becoming, as a result, a nice juicier target for the criminals to target. Now, many of you probably, if you're not familiar with IT, you may see on the movies that these attackers are really intelligent people, sophisticated, and using all these wonderful tools to hack into systems. And every time we read about a cyber attack, the phrase used is we were victims of a sophisticated attack. I have to say the majority of attacks are not sophisticated, and they don't require a whole lot of sophistication or complexity to break in. 85% of most attacks are down to humans being involved in some way, shape, or form. 2/3 or nearly 2/3, 61% involve your credentials. So this is where criminals are sending out phishing emails or texts to try and guess what your password is. And if that password allows them to get into your company's environment or your organization's environment, they will use that. What we see regularly is people use passwords, and they will pick a secure password, but they may use that password across many different systems. And if one, so they sign up for a newsletter on a particular website, you use the same password that you might use for logging into your work email. If that newsletter you signed up for, if they have a breach and they get a copy of your password, they now have a copy of the password for your work email. Or they will send you an email to convince you to give your credentials and hand them over, and they can log in. The majority of the attacks don't require a whole lot of sophistication. It's just simply convincing people to hand over their passwords. And I'm often asked, who are behind these attacks? Are they kind of, bored teenagers, the typical atypical geek that we envision? No, it's actually highly organized crime, heavily involved in other areas of crime, be that human trafficking, drug trafficking, prostitution, traditional crimes, etc. They are heavily involved in this. And as you can see, this is a video from Ukrainian police last week arresting cyber criminals in a ransomware gang. Not the ransomware gang that attacked the HSE, but you see the top left-hand corner there. You don't wear that type of gear and carry automatic weapons if you're going to arrest a 17-year-old bored teenager that's operating out of their parents' basement and hacking systems for kicks. You dress like that when you know the criminals involved are heavily armed and have no compunction about taking people's lives and are only in this for the money. And that to the right there is the amount of money. That's their US dollars that you can see there. They're the individuals that were arrested. On the bottom right hand corner, they're gold bars this criminal gang purchased with the money they stole and extorted from people. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and the risk to reward ratio is very high. If I'm in Russia and I attack a company in Ireland, it's very difficult for the Gardaí to get international cooperation with Russian police or police in other countries to serve warrants and arrest people. So from the criminal, it's high reward, low risk. And again, we can see just this week, there's 30 countries met this week to talk about how they're going to fight ransomware and cybercrime. And that's going to talk about how internationally, with policies and political will and putting maybe new regulations around cryptocurrencies, that they will tackle the scourge of ransomware. And Russia has been, and China as well, have been both been excluded from those talks because of the concerns over how close they may be related to those things. Now, the other thing we need to think about the implications is that at some stage, an organization, the organization you work in or others, may be impacted by a cyber attack, and best time to prepare for a cyber attack is now. And some of the key lessons I think we should take away from the HSE attack are communications and transparency are absolutely critical to reassuring people. I unfortunately couldn't be around this morning, but I would have commended Mr. Reid on the openness of the HSE and the willingness of the HSE to provide information as quickly as possible. And that's what you need to do as part of your crisis management is to build that in. The stance the HSE and the country took about not paying the ransom was right in my opinion, and highly respected, because you pay the ransom, you're only giving criminals more money. Can you trust criminals to give you the key to decrypt your data? And even though, like another key important lesson from the HSE attack is that even though the HSE got the key back to decrypt the encrypted files, it still is taking this long to recover the system. So paying for a ransomware key to decrypt your data is no guarantee you're going to get information back or even get it back quickly. For those of you who have just some final 2 slides about how you can protect your own personal accounts to prevent them from being hijacked, or indeed your own work accounts, do use multi-factor authentication. Any of you who are using social media like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Zoom, anything else, turn on multi-factor authentication. That's basically that if I want to hack into your account, I need more than just your password. If all you have protecting your Facebook account is your password, then all I need to do is get that password off you by a phishing email or by any other means, and I now have control of your Facebook account. If you turn on multi-factor authentication, it means if I try and log in with your password, it detects it's a new login, it will send a message to your phone or request you enter code from an application on your phone to verify that it is you. I would also need access to your phone to do that. Otherwise, if you use the same password and that gets compromised, if you have any pets, I'm afraid it's going to get very confusing for them, because every time there's a breach, you're going to have to rename your dog or rename your cat or rename your pet. So hopefully that's a quick overview of what the implications for the cyber attack has been, not just for the HSE, but for us as a country and as a society, and indeed at an international level. This attack has been viewed with great interest and great concern internationally, and hopefully, as maybe similar to COVID-19, lots of bad things has happened, but hopefully some good things will come out of that as well, and hopefully the HSE attack will bring some good things to bear as well. So thank you very much. I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you very much indeed, Brian. And again, I have a substantial number of questions here, and I'll give you one and I'll scan through the rest if I may. How do you protect against cyber attack yet still ensure that organizations can continue to work? And this just slightly reflects on the, I suppose, degradation of performance in hospitals, for example, since the cyber attack.
I could give my tongue-in-cheek answer and ring my company and we'll sort that out for you, but the real answer is that, as with everything, it's a risk-based approach. There are lots of different ways that, depending on your organization and the type of threats your organization faces, measures can be put in place to protect your systems. But at the end of the day, those systems are there to provide work, and I'm quite familiar with the healthcare sector, and your jobs, many people in the healthcare sector, is to support patients. It's not to be worried about computers, and if every 5 minutes or 2 minutes you have to re-enter your password or go through a complicated process of getting the patient data, that delays treatment or that impacts treatment. So there are various different mechanisms out there, and the key thing is to make sure there's an appropriate balance is got between the risks you're facing and the controls you put in place. I would say the biggest protection any organization can do, and as an individual, as I just highlighted in my own presentation there, is turn on multi-factor authentication. If you haven't done it, get your organization to do it. If you haven't done it for your own personal accounts, do it, because that's going to reduce, particularly your email inboxes to criminals are gold dust. If I get into your email, I can pretend to be you. I can reset your passwords for every system you use, because those reset passwords come to your email box and then I'll break into other systems. Or you may even have stored passwords in your email or other sensitive information. So turn on multi-factor authentication everywhere where you can.
Okay, Brian. Now I have a tsunami of questions here. I'm going to merge three slightly here. They're related questions, and beginning with multiple passwords in hospitals stuck on post-it notes to PCs. That's a remark. The question, I suppose, are some systems just not robust enough, not fit for purpose? And do you think the cyber attack was preventable? Would there be in some way, perhaps by better systems, more modern systems perhaps, and also this matter of multiple systems needing separate passwords? And any comments on that, please?
Yeah, look, the issue of multiple passwords for different systems is not unique to healthcare. I see it in some of our financial clients within banks, government, other government areas, and large organizations. And unfortunately, it is the result of, if you like, how IT has been deployed in many organizations over the past decades. IT is a relatively new discipline, and many organizations rolled out IT more in an evolutionary type way than as a proactive way. So systems were bought to fit one solution and not thought about integrating with other ones. So multiple passwords is an issue. There are solutions out there, but unfortunately you do have to invest to do that. There are solutions to enable logging on to multiple systems at the same time, but they do require investment. The question you asked about the old systems and was that the cause of the HSE attack? Well, first of all, I don't know what the root cause or how the attackers got into the HSE, so I can't put my hand on my heart and say, yes, this is how it is. But using old outdated systems such as Windows 7 does leave you at a higher risk. We don't know how the attackers got in. If it was a phishing email and somebody, even if it was a Windows 10 laptop the person was using, if they still had local administrator access to that machine to allow them to install stuff on that machine, the attack could have happened regardless of whether it was Windows 10 or Windows 7. So it's hard to say what the root cause is, but one of the ways to prevent attacks is to restrict people's access to what they just need, and also keep the systems as up to date as possible.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian. And again, my apologies for delaying, but we have run a bit over time, and we're very grateful that you've been able to stay on and run it at this time. I think at this point, we'll move on to the next presentation. And thank you very much, Brian, for that very useful.
You're welcome.